I'm undertaking a major branding shift in my work because having been a futurist for 23 years or so, I realized it's been great to speak about the future. It's been great to speak about business. And I've learned a lot. My clients have learned a lot, I think. I have over 1,000 videos on YouTube. And it's been really great. I have 300,000 subscribers on YouTube now. But I feel there's a time now to talk about more important things than how to use technology or how to do better business. And I felt that way for quite some time. I've had the discussion of the good future and all that stuff. You were part of these discussions. And now I'm repositioning myself to be known as a public thinker. That's, of course, what I already do, because I've been feeling a little bit that the futurist thing is a marketing tag. And it's you get stuck in this drawer where people are saying, oh, Gerd knows the future. There's no such thing. You've been through the same process, I'm sure. I want to leave the futurists behind and graduate to the next edition of what I do, which is the public thinking. And a public thinker is defined by talking about stuff that really matters and making a difference and having impact. This is the important part, right? Being independent from commercial agendas. I feel like the discussion about how to use AI for business, that discussion is really a different discussion about what we really need in the world, which is a wider way of thinking, and the collaborative question and the global consciousness question that we have discussed. And of course, all the issues that require free thinkers. And so I've been feeling a little bit like there's a trend towards leaving that stuff out because it isn't as important for companies. So I'm moving to this public thinking brand.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of reactions. First, bravo, Gerd, you're always one step ahead. And I really do like your call it a pivot, call it transition. It makes a lot of sense to be moving into the public thinking space for a couple of reasons. Number one, over the last 5-6 years, because of people like yourself, I've contributed a bit, but Into the Future has. Everybody's talking futurism. So in many ways, I think we've succeeded in bringing futures into the public conversation, into the discourse, into the thinking. Now, the downside of that is that you really dilute and get a lot less quality thinking about the future. And it becomes more company-driven. It becomes more technology-driven. And I do think the key messages about engaging people and making an impact can get lost. So that's one reason I think it makes a lot of sense for you to go into that space. And secondly, absolutely agree with you. Your conversations, I've seen transition over the last 2-3 years to being very, very explicit about the systemic issues that we face, focusing on the green transition, focusing on some of the economic models that have been driving us to climate change, having questions about production and consumption. Was it capitalism or where I am? Socialism with Chinese characteristics. I think by moving into the public thinking space, you're going to be in a much more legitimate position to be explicitly blunt, provocative, to encourage everyone to make some of those hard choices.
Thank you. I think the inherent challenge has been that the more you work for corporations, the more there's a creeping effect of changing the honesty and basically dialing into their concerns. And really, I think the only way that you can be an independent futurist is by having customers who can afford you, not being an academic, not being a famous writer, not being able to speak at events that don't have the budget. That's another thing that's becoming a real issue. Yeah? The bottom line is we've got 5 years to get it together. And that is the reality. Now, so we were thinking of artificial general intelligence and the dominance of machines and so on as being, 2040 prospect. But that is coming much quicker and earlier now. I think that's 2030. And now you're living in a country where that is also, of course, top of the agenda. And then the greening of the world, the green future scenario, the sustainability and the climate change factor, we thought that was going to be, 2060, we may have huge issues. But now it turns out we're heading towards a world of 2, 3, 4 degree warming. And it's going to be in 5 years. And everything is happening much faster. The future is already here. And we need to pull out all the stops to collaborate. And we are actually capable of solving most of those practical issues with science and technology that we are inventing, like medical issues and cancer and energy, nuclear fusion, quantum computing. You have it. All of these things we can do. But what do we do with it? We don't agree on how to do it, and we don't collaborate. And the first thing we do is we build weapons using AI, right? And we think about drones and how we can kill more efficiently and so on. And so these are very big issues because they come down to one thing. Are we capable of collaboration? Are we capable of finding a global agenda? And what is their actual council of wisdom? And can they actually be the sort of Star Trek economy leaders? And so those are all big questions. And I think they need more public thinkers. When I think of public thinkers and public intellectuals, you could say, really, I wouldn't call myself an intellectual, but that's a different discussion.
Right.
So you have in China, or we had here somewhere else now, it's Ai Weiwei, one of the most important people in art and, of course, in public thinking. And he says we need to get on the same page to think of the future as something that we decide and that we make, and that exists only in collaboration. Because in 20 years, clearly, either we collaborate or we won't be here. And this is the whole question about climate change, about artificial intelligence, about nuclear energy and all these things. That to me is the agenda, is to figure out more collaboration and more getting on the same page, like I was doing with the Good Future Project. Never mind what you think about socialism, populism, other isms, and capitalism. The only thing that matters is for us, are we going to be in a planet that has 10 billion people where we collaborate on the important issues? And once we have nuclear fusion, we're going to leave the planet, and we'll be able to leave the planet. And these are huge issues that we have to work on together. And we're not going to get any further by saying we're going to have another arms race, a sort of Manhattan Project for AI. If that's the case for AI, we are not going to maintain our position as the most intelligent species if we invent a super intelligence. So these are important topics. That brings me to the second discussion. So thanks for your feedback on the public thinker. What is your view on this debate about not just what I call intelligent assistance, which is the low level of AI really, that is basically everywhere, and AI as a business instrument, that's everywhere, digital assistants, those are business and social issues, but they're not existential issues. Yeah. But the declared goal of some companies like OpenAI and, of course, Microsoft and Baidu, I think, as well, and other companies around the world, is to build an artificial general intelligence that is not necessarily like a human, but an alien, a separate intelligence from us, you could say. The declaration of OpenAI and Microsoft and other companies is to build an intelligence that is superior to all of humanity. That's the goal. And I wonder what your take is on this.
Well, I think a couple of points are critical in this debate, and I think there are no clear answers. But what I like about the examples that you raised is that we have some pretty clear signals of where companies are going. So if you take the example of OpenAI and Microsoft, you can certainly get a sense that their interest in creating AGI is going to be driven by business interests. What I do like about Apple Intelligence is that it seems to be moving more towards your own personal AGI. If you are willing to give Apple access to your email, your calendar, your contacts, your conversations, and it seems to be the way they're positioning it is almost augmenting the user's intelligence. And I think that model is interesting because it does go away from what Microsoft tried to do with recall and then recall the recall, because clearly it was much more in the surveillance direction. Now, in both of those examples, because you have US companies, there is no real top-down policy that can give some guardrails. And that's why I do find, being in China, I feel a little more comfortable that there is governmental regulation. I can get a little bit frustrated with internet access, but overall, I do feel that there's a more governmental guardrails. I wouldn't use the word controls. I use the word guardrails because there is a massive risk. And if you look at all the conversations about deepfakes, I mean, nobody in the West is doing anything about it. And I think these guardrails and also the slower development that Chinese companies are pursuing, it seems to be a more rational approach to AGI. And I personally feel more comfortable given the tendency, as you pointed out, to use technology for not for good, not for a better future. And so we've got to have more public thinkers like yourself that are striking the right balance between raising the alarm bells and provocation and to help encourage convergence and even a bit of consensus towards a good or better future.
These, of course, are complicated topics because on that level, they touch on national security, they touch on the military, they touch on genome development. But for example, we'll be able to explain genomic changes and with the new sort of protein folding technologies to figure out our genome much quicker and to do something about issues of the genome, which is another huge can of worms. But basically, I think what is happening is that the development of a general intelligent entity, a digital entity, is on the agenda for a lot of companies that have trillions of dollars to invest. And my view is that if you are in the business of AI as a business tool like IBM or creating more efficient business, better way of doing things and so on, that's one thing. But if your declared goal is to change humanity forever and invent a super intelligence that is superseding us, that is not something that is a private business issue. This is something that has every component of potential disruption or potential nirvana, but most likely potential disruption forever. And this is, for example, if you're looking at Apple's strategy on this, which is, I think, ingenious, as most Apple things are, is to say, we are going to use this technology to make you more powerful and to keep your authority over yourself. So Apple has not said, for example, that Siri becomes my intelligent assistant that becomes like the movie Her, that runs my life and that I can fall in love with and so on, and that takes over my life. While a lot of the other guys are saying, like OpenAI, every business person, every person really, will have their own intelligent assistant that is like a copy of a real person that actually does things on our behalf. So this is a complete kind of deauthorization scheme where you can say, okay, on a marginal level, a bot that makes my appointments or that books a flight for me, that's one thing. But what about if that bot makes important decisions about my investment portfolio and it becomes a black box, for example, that I don't understand how it does things anymore because it's too clever and it's too fast. And then I say, you know what, you have my cancer treatment figured out and I'm going to just let you do this. And then it becomes a black box that's not just in one part of our lives, but it's a black box symptom in every part of our lives, to where our lives become a rigged simulation, you could say. And this is not science fiction, because we can already see this play out in democratic issues, and that people are no longer trusting other people, but they are trusting technology. That becomes a big issue, I think, because at that point, you're crossing the line from business to essentially being mission control for humanity, as I like to say. And nobody should alone be mission control for humanity. So hence, I'm proposing that we should say, okay, you know what? I think there's a lot of great stuff happening with AI, just like there was with the invention of the printing press or fire or the internet or many good things here. But we should not invent something that is going to be for sure 99.9% outside of our control. And also that is not actually controlled or attempted to be controlled by the majority of people in charge of running the course of humanity. So this becomes a private activity, which I think is not a good idea, especially when we're talking about the two poles of this, the US and China, very likely to gear up towards an arms race being an issue of power. And it's not something we could win. So basically, you can win the nuclear non-proliferation. Most people that try to build bombs, it's pretty complicated and it's not simple. But AI is code, and it's a lot simpler to cause havoc with that. So I'm proposing a non-proliferation treaty on the level of superintelligence to get together and say, okay, yes, we could do this. Technically speaking, it's possible. I think in 5 years, we'll have a level of AI that's unheard of and insurmountable. But in 10 years, we could have a super intelligent system that would replicate itself, reinvent itself. And that is a super intelligence that we could not survive, as would become the second level intelligence. So wonder what you think about the idea of being able to control AI or controlled superintelligence, which is more to the point, really.
Well, I think it's, as you pointed out, it is going to be a challenge. Well, we've seen how the UN has failed with war and trying to create peaceful conditions for countries and people and religion to be able to work together and live together. So the UN model, I think, unfortunately, is not fit for purpose, given where we are today. I am also very concerned because of this lack of coming together as a global community to be able to pull our collective intelligence and to do, as you suggest, to create a non-proliferation treaty. So I'm concerned about that. I am, on the other hand, when I watch even some of the recent videos from OpenAI's collaboration with Be My Eyes, how AI can actually help. I mean, in that short clip that everyone is saying, to be able to help a blind person hail a taxi, to be able to have a new pair of eyes, that's a good example of augmenting intelligence. I am also comforted by the fact that we were never able to create Internet of Things, smart systems, because we really never cracked the code on how to connect the digital and the physical world. Still very, very limited. So that means that ultimately a lot of the decision making that needs to happen, it still has to happen by humans to be able to pull switches.
This is the key point, of course. The artificial intelligence at this point does not know the real world.
Right.
The real world
Exactly.
is about feeling, touching, sensing, and humans are three-dimensional and we have a body. And so AI at this point is bodiless, it's senseless, it has no common sense. It doesn't understand the future and it doesn't understand jokes. It only understands the physical components like looking at my face and those kind of things. I think it's at 5 to 8% of the actual intelligence of real lives. However, what we're seeing is that as we're spending more money on super processing, and once we figure out how to not have too many emissions from this, we're going to end up in a place where, for example, supercomputing, quantum computing, and nuclear fusion, which provides unlimited energy, will provide unlimited computing, which means that the idea of sensing for digital entities isn't that far-fetched. Of course, you can't sense love or compassion. That's not a mathematical process, but the AI can simulate compassion, empathy, love from observing what it is. And therefore, it can be a copy of love, so to speak, a simulation of love. And that can create a lot of confusion, like we see in the movie Her. First and foremost, I think it could really confuse us to lose track of who we are and to create a synthetic world. And I would describe artificial intelligence as 4 pieces. One is the cognification, making smart, which is a good thing. And then augmentation, which helps me to do things faster, better by augmenting my abilities with a data glove or the Internet of Things. And then thirdly is virtualization, which allows me to go into the data space and to travel like we do now virtually. And the last one is automation, which people think is important. I think it's probably less important than people think. But those are the 4 pieces. Now, if we have a machine that can do all of that, which I think is likely in the next decade, then I think this is totally a question of collaboration, just in the sense of climate change, the same thing. We can be net zero in Europe and the US in 5 years. It would not save the day unless we can get everybody to net zero. And this will be the same with AI. So we can make an agreement and say, I'm not going to use it for hacking your financial network. And I'm not going to build a super intelligence that becomes a super army of drones. So we're not going to do that. And we're going to agree there's a standard, even though people break the standard. But there are sanctions, and there's an overall willingness to stay with the standard, as we have a nuclear or genetic engineering or the ozone layer, you know. The UN has been doing a lot of these things, which we have to give them credit for. But will we find a way to create a standard on superintelligence so that we can harness it? Can we end cancer? Can we do all these things? I think we can, but only if we do it together. And this is the thing that Antonio Guterres from the UN talks about all the time. He says basically the future is collaboration or demise. And Antonio is a brilliant guy, in my view, always says the right things, but do people pay attention to him? Do they actually follow this and say, okay, a collaboration or demise? Nobody will choose demise. No matter where you are in the world, nobody wants a bad future.
And that's the premise of the book, The Future We Choose, that was written, I forgot their names, who drafted the Paris Climate Agreement. And it's a great story of the hard work that's required to be able to truly understand each other and then make some of those hard choices, which is really at the root of collaboration. And if we're not able to start collaborating in a different way, then you're absolutely right. We're going to, by default, go down the demise path. If I may, I'll push my new book that's coming out at the end of this year called Designing Sustainable Futures. Myself and Manuel Uccelli, my co-author, we talk about the importance of being able to imagine a better future, then to design the experiences and to collaborate and lead together to make the hard choices, because those are hard choices. I would love to have an AI that would do everything that I'm not interested in doing. But in order to get there, I need to make choices and know what AI is good for and what I don't want AI to be good for. And if we are able to think differently about really cognition, because AI is based on the computer as mind, or mind as computer metaphor. And many of us forget about embodied cognition. As you said, all of our five senses bring us information, they give us sensation, and most importantly, they give us sensation about people. You can't get that when you're interacting with a chatbot. As real as it may seem, there's still going to be some uncanny valley. And ideally, what I try to do in my work is, certainly with my students now, is to educate them to be more embodied, to be more present, to be sensitive of their environment. I think that's a very powerful way to help shift the mindset away from solutions and technology to engagement and being more present with people, which is going to be fundamental if we are really going to switch how we communicate so that we can better collaborate and address some of these issues like climate change, like better health, etc.
This is the challenge. We have to remain holistic thinkers and holistic business models, which means that there's other concerns except apart from the most fancy technology and the excitement about technology, or the excitement about money. If you take the American model, it's the excitement about money, and the Chinese model is the excitement of the state about money and business, and it's a different variation of it. But it's the same direction. We need more excitement about not just one thing, because basically if we have a quadruple agenda, like I keep saying, people, planet, purpose, prosperity, if we can use AI in such a way where we say, okay, we help people, we help the planet, we increase prosperity, but we also generate purpose. You can't always have 10 out of 10 on each, obviously, but you make your choices, and we don't have this one-track economy. Right now, it's a 1P economy, that's profit. And I always say jokingly that I'm working on the full stack economy, the 4Ps, because I think that is the ticket to using AI. Otherwise, it becomes destructive, and where we lose our holistic approach, which means we become disembodied and we become meaningless, because part of that debate is that AI creates this illusion that everything is effortless. This is a total illusion, of course, because especially in Asian culture, effort is part of the outcome. Right? Effort is not something to be done away with. Like you build a relationship with a woman or a man, it's an effort. And if you don't build the effort, you don't have the outcome. You have a fake relationship.
Yeah, but what both of us are saying resonates with your book. We need to be using AI to augment our humanity. And if we're not able to get together and agree on that, we are going to be really challenged to deal with what's happening in the world today and really not be able to build a better future.
Yeah, I know you have to go pretty soon, so I want to wrap up and just say, I think that for me, we don't need to intervene in business affairs of artificial intelligence as long as they are about business and about free economy and the propensity of companies to monetize and to make lives better, whether it's a medical or financial or whatever. But I think the idea of these becoming reasoning entities, like Sam Altman keeps saying, we're going to invent entities that are creative and thinking and planning and reasoning. No, I don't want these AIs to reason, because if they are reasoning, then I think they can reason in different ways that are not aligned with ours. It's an alignment problem. And as long as we haven't solved the alignment problem, I think it's basically about keeping the humans in the loop. And how do we do that? Well, we have to agree on this is important to keep the humans in the loop.
Well, listen, it sounds very, very familiar when social media began, that this was the technology that was going to bring people together. And then
Mhm.
it's done the exact opposite. It's really created much more division, and AI is going to be much worse. So when we do hear the utopian scenarios, I think you're absolutely right. We've got to be very, very cautious, because social media will pale in comparison to the damage that AI, particularly AGI, is going to be able to do.
And I think it's because when we had social media in the beginning, the goal was to bring people together and to monetize that in some way. But now the goal is to influence people and to make them buy things and to advertise to them and to milk their data for the platform economy. It's what Amazon calls the flywheel. So
Right.
it's flying on both sides and you get sucked on both ends. In the middle is Amazon. And it's like they can do whatever they want now because they're in the middle of the flywheel. And this is a bad thing. If that happens in social media, it has destroyed public media and publishing in so many ways. We need to repair that by bringing the human back in, but we shouldn't make the same mistake with AI. As I said before, if it's a business issue, I think it's fine to do whatever you can to make it smarter and more intelligent and so on. But if it's an issue of society and also maybe superseding humanity, inventing an alien intelligence, then I'm saying like this, if that's going to be your goal, you're subject to supervision, regulation, and you can't be a private entity if you're going to redo the course of humanity. That makes no sense because you're going to change everybody's life by inventing something that is so potentially powerful that it could be heaven or hell.